Thank you. It's lovely to see some familiar faces here. And nice to be amongst prayer warriors. So, I've been looking forward to tonight. So in the first session, I sort of just want to share briefly around just sort of what's happening in our culture. It's probably going to be nothing new to many of you in terms of what we're seeing happening. But it seems it's very different from possibly the culture that a lot of you grew up in, that I grew up in, where it was quite acceptable to hold Judeo-Christian values, and sometimes they were even reinforced in the law, and church was deemed to be a legitimate part of our culture. But it seems that a little bit like, my favourite story is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who faced a culture that wanted them to bow down to a different type of God, and they had to decide whether they were going to or not. And it seems like for many believers, that same challenge is coming to confront each one of us in various capacities. It can be either very public, like we saw with Israel Folau and other sports people who have made a stand for their faith, even politicians who have celebrated the overturning of laws which allowed for abortion, and getting told off by the media and getting told off by their political party. And as parents, I think raising our children is becoming even more of a challenge as well, not because raising children isn't a challenge already, but we're in a culture that is very hostile to the values that you and I may share in terms of, biblical ethics and biblical sexual ethics, especially in that area. And so I think it's really important for us to be firstly praying for parents and for families, just for protection over them, especially for families who are wanting to raise their children in a biblical way and want to hold to those values, because they're going to be constantly challenged. And they're going into school settings where they're starting to teach, for example, critical race theory, where apparently races should be separated, and some are the oppressor and some are oppressed. I mean, it all sounds very foreign to a lot of us, but this is the type of stuff that's being pushed on very young children. It's the same with the whole sexuality and the gender identity issues. We've actually just put out a paper today highlighting what schools and the curriculum and the Ministry of Education want taught to our children as young as 6 and 7. And they're being taught that you may have been born in the wrong body, that you were assigned a biological birth, whether you're male or female at birth, but you can then choose to change that if you want to. Now, this type of stuff, I'm sure you just shake your head and say, well, hang on, isn't somebody going to wake up and just speak the truth? But it's a very strong ideology, and it's being pushed in all sectors of the curriculum in schools. It's being targeted at our kids through social media and through what they're watching, and so it's a real challenge for parents just to protect their kids, and bring them up in the ways of the Lord as we want to. So, I think we need to, the example is, of course, this new conversion therapy law that says that apparently you cannot affirm your daughter as being a girl, and you could get in trouble for affirming your son as being a boy if they're wanting to identify as something else. It seems ludicrous, but it is unfortunately a culture that's being driven by self-determination. So no longer, it's a rejection of God, isn't it? It's basically saying we can determine who we are, we can determine what we do, and anybody that challenges us should be criminalized. And so for parents, for counsellors, for pastors, when people come to them who are troubled in areas of sexuality and gender identity, suddenly we've got a law that says that actually, I don't know if you realize this, but the law says that you could be imprisoned for up to 5 years if you're deemed to be practicing some form of conversion therapy. And so that's a huge concern, because most, parents don't want to break the law. but at the same time, they want to affirm the truth in their kids. And so there's this conflict between the culture and truth. And I sort of understand that for a lot of us, we possibly feel a bit weary. There is just so much going on, and we sort of see so much change happening around us. We see a liberal abortion law, we see euthanasia coming in, we see attempts to legalize and normalize drug use, we see birth certificates that can be determined based on whether you choose to be a male or female, not based on what you were at birth. And we see these conversion therapy laws, and you know, you can sort of get a bit despondent, can't you? And feel really feel under pressure. But I think, fortunately, we have the armor of God to be our battle plan. And I actually preached in church yesterday about David and Goliath. And my final word of encouragement to the church was, don't fight like a man, fight like a believer. And that's what David did. He fought like a believer because he was coming in the name of God. And I think, you know, a lot of Christians are feeling very weary. And people have actually said to me, how do you keep going when you sort of constantly facing these issues? And I say, well, I don't think we're called to win, because, well, we know the end story, don't we? We know ultimately who the winner is, but we're not called to win. We're called to speak truth. And there's been many social debates that we need to enter into, and it's going to be an uphill battle, but we're not called to necessarily win. We're called to speak God's truth and to bring light into darkness. So what am I saying? I guess out of all that, we're living in a culture that wants to cancel us, wants to cancel our faith, wants to cancel scripture, wants to cancel God's truth. And we need to put on the armor of God, and that armor of God includes prayer. And we need to, I guess, not fight like a man, fight like a believer. And prayer obviously is one of our key armors, our key weapons that we can use. So I know for Family First, we actually have a strategy group, an intercessor group throughout New Zealand that we share our prayer needs with. But, you know, this group that you are all together with is so strategic and important, because as we know, we don't battle against flesh and blood, we battle against principalities and powers. And so I guess, Andrew, as we break into prayer groups, I'd encourage us to pray, well, firstly for parents and for families, because obviously at grassroots level, they're under the most attack, especially for Christian parents trying to raise their children in a godly way, being challenged by the culture. But also we need to pray for the leadership as well, because actually there are Christians in Parliament, and just from my discussions, they're very isolated. They're being isolated deliberately, and so we need to pray for those Christians in Parliament that we can stand with them and hold their arms up in the battle. And also, I think we need to pray for Christian leaders and for Christians in general, that we don't lose hope, that we don't get battle weary, and that we realize that we're not called to win. We're called to speak truth. No matter what's going on in the culture, we have to speak truth at whatever cost. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, even if, they're still not going to bow down to the culture, and we need to decide if we're going to be even if type Christians. And you know, sometimes that means maybe some negative media coverage. Maybe it means losing some social media friends. Maybe it means some family members aren't happy with what we've said. But if we say it in a way of truth, but seasoned with grace and love, but without compromising the truth, then that's what God's calling us to do. So yeah, Andrew, that would be, I guess, what I'd encourage us to spend some time praying for is just boldness for parents, godly parents and families, boldness for Christian politicians and people in positions of Christian leadership throughout our nation, to start speaking, the courage to continue to speak truth especially as the culture is desperate to cancel us. Liz put a comment about that she'd received some information home from her school about a program, sex education program, which is rife with gender ideology. It's a mates and dates program by ACC. In fact, I just sent through to Liz, and I can put it in the chat after I've finished talking. But one of the key things that we really want to do is equip and empower people to speak up. I talk about us needing to be salt and light in the culture and need to be brave and speak up. And so we want to try and give the resources that you can use in the public sphere. I mean, obviously, Scripture is our foundation. But often a biblical argument doesn't always work in the marketplace. And so we need to be able to answer with some of the research and facts which people may be more willing to listen to. That's just what we're up against. So today I'd actually just released a fact sheet on sexuality and gender education in schools. So I was well aware of the program that Liz was referring to, and unfortunately, as I said in the first bracket, schools are being indoctrinated to teach 5, 6, 7-year-olds to start teaching them that sex and gender are different, and that you can choose your gender, and that you may have been born a boy or a girl, but that doesn't mean you need to stay a boy or a girl. That is rife. It's being pushed by the state. And of course, you're getting critical theory as well. So we do have sheets. In fact, we've just released a fact sheet on the new conversion therapy law as well, which sort of helps counsellors and parents understand it. So our website is a service to people, and everything's free, and there's no copyright, and people can plagiarise to their heart's content at familyfirst.nz. So the Supreme, just very quickly, the Supreme Court decision, really it was a fight between the state and Family First, the right of Family First to hold certain views on marriage and family. And one of the statements made by one of the judges in the High Court was that promoting marriage in the traditional family had no public benefit. Now, a lot of people raise their eyebrows at that and say, surely they didn't say that. Yes, they did. They said that promoting the traditional family and marriage has no public benefit in contemporary New Zealand society, quote. And so that's what we were up against. And it went through 4 court cases. It cost us about $750,000 fighting over 10 years. But we felt it was important because it was basically we were challenging the state interference as to what people should believe. Unfortunately, the state have had the last say because the Supreme Court have deemed that we should be deregistered. But in some ways, it's been a bit of a wake-up call, I think, for church leaders especially, to realise that, yeah, the culture does want to cancel us. The culture wants to cancel Scripture. The culture wants to cancel biblical sexual ethics. They want to cancel many things that you and I hold dear. They'd love to cancel this particular event, I'm sure, every time you gather. So that's part of the reason we fought it. We're not going away. Doesn't affect us really. We'll still continue. We don't need charitable status, but I did want to fight it because I felt there was an important principle involved. That why did they target just us and not other charities who do similar type of advocacy and political advocacy? The answer is simple, because we're a Christian group and we're saying things that the culture doesn't want to hear anymore. What was the other thing, Andrew, we were going to talk about? The conference. Yeah, sorry.
Don't forget the conference.
So we have a conference coming up in 3 weeks. It's at Manukau. It's a forum on the family. It's about our 14th one, I think it is. We hold it once a year, and it's a gathering of like-minded conservatives to talk about some of these issues. We've got 2 US speakers. One is Jennifer Lal, who is very big on bioethics and culture and is coming to talk about surrogacy and sperm donor, because there's a bill currently before Parliament on that. We've got a guy called Joe Dallas, who came out of the homosexual lifestyle, was involved with Exodus Ministries. He's coming to talk about being Christians in a cancel culture. Some of you may have heard of Martin Iles from Australian Christian Lobby. He is coming to speak again, backed by popular demand. Rachel Wong, who is with Women's Forum in Australia, who was actually born and bred in New Zealand, but is working in Australia. She is a lawyer, and she is speaking about the most trickiest question in the world: what is a woman? And I'm also interviewing Peter Williams, the TVNZ newsreader, who has, since he got married, has come into the Catholic faith and actually holds some fairly conservative views, and obviously has 40 years experience in the media. So, we want to find out a little bit of background of that and talk to him. So I'm going to interview him. And then Alfred Nato, the ex-National MP, is going to also challenge us as well. The registrations, we are basically at double what we normally get. Last year we had about 450. We're already up to 600 registered, and we've still got another 3 weeks to go. So we've had to order a bigger room, and now I've had to order an even bigger room. But it's going to be a large gathering of like-minded people. So if any of you can make it to Manukau on September the 6th, I'll put the web link in the comment section, but it's forumonthefamily.nz. So obviously we'd appreciate prayer for that event, for the right people to be there, for the message to be effective and motivating and based on truth, and empowering for people who do attend, and especially for key people to be there, especially church leadership, I think. Because as I say, we're very, our church leaders have an important role to play in terms of encouraging and motivating and leading people in speaking up in the culture. And we need our leaders to do that. So there's a great quote that I love from Reverend Billy Graham, who said, "When a brave person takes a stand, it stiffens the spines of others." And I think that's so true. When church leadership, when you and I speak up, when we're brave, it stiffens the spines of others who say, "Hey, I can see them standing up. Yeah, I need to make that stand as well." So I guess it's those types of people that we would really like to be at the conference. And I know for many of you, you may not be able to travel that far or may not be available, but even to know that you're praying for the event leading up to it and on the day is really important.